In this video, we're going to be discussing monsters, particularly the idea of monster as a useful metaphor to capture a phenomenon well known to most people, the phenomenon of internal psychological resistance. Now, we've all experienced on one level this distinction between what we might call the actual and the potential. In our actual world, we see around us all of the things which we might say are extremely negative: homelessness, poverty, malfunction, corruption, crime, you name it. There is an endless list of things in our actual world which suggest that both ourselves and our communities are at a distance from what they could potentially be. Now, in our mind, and specifically in images and representations of the self and representations of our societies, we can imagine a higher state. We can imagine a state of perfect being. This is often captured, obviously, in religious figures and religious archetypes. Jesus and Buddha are probably the two most frequently named representations of this. Of course, in our modern world, we often represent figures of the higher self, or we idealize people that we see on the world stage as actualizing or embodying this potential. People who can speak well, people who can act with the highest virtue, people who can seemingly do unbelievable creative feats. These are people who, through their self-actualization, have captured some potential which we lack in actuality. Now, in terms of how we experience this distance between actual and potential, it appears to emerge as a type of gap in our present being, a gap of desire and resistance. When we desire something, to speak well, to act in accordance with our highest nature, to achieve some great creative feat, we can simultaneously experience within ourselves a resistance to this actualization. We can internally feel as if there are irreducible problems, whether they be social, sexual, creative, political, which would prevent us, or which would block us from achieving that state. Now, this balance between, or this tension between desire and resistance, is something that can permanently block a human being, can permanently block one person from ever actually doing anything, which means that your actual state will remain the same. There's a certain structure of desire and resistance which will perpetuate itself indefinitely. And it could do this by basically a self-conviction that there's an external blockage which prevents one from achieving the desire one wants to achieve. However, the crucial realization is a self-reflective recognition that what is external to oneself, the form of resistance that one would say is outside oneself, is in fact something operating within oneself, something invisible, something internal. The structure of desire and resistance comes to us in the form of dark emotions. This could be fear, this could be sadness, this could be terror, this could be depression, this could be living in a perpetual nightmare, this could be living in a normalized state of consciousness where one feels helpless, where one feels powerless. When one is in a state like this, the possibility of escape is one that can only be achieved through a type of recognition that one is self-blocked, one is internally blocked, and one is being controlled from within by images of resistance. So ultimately, when we think about our internal monsters, when we think about psychological resistance, we're essentially dealing with a battle internal to ourself. And the only way in which we can overcome this battle is through basically giving the highest form of consciousness and the highest form of attention we can to those darker emotions which are unconsciously controlling us, whether that is fear, depression, sadness, helplessness, powerlessness. These are our own internal demons. These are constituents of our own psyche, which precisely need you to simply turn around and look at them and face them and move through them. This is a negativity which paradoxically holds the most magical power of transformation. Because when one realizes that any external resistance which one is imagining as preventing one from achieving the highest desire is actually something which is created through a self-blockage, one then gains the ability to reflectively approach this self-blockage itself. The only thing in the way is integrating the negativity. The only thing in the way is integrating the self-blockage and actualizing a totally different state of consciousness. This was a little introduction to the idea that psychological resistance is best represented through the metaphor of internal monsters. We'll pick up on this theme in the next vlog, where we'll talk about how one can take these internal monsters and transform them into a higher positivity.